Good evening. We are live. This is so exciting. Thank you for everyone that's showing up to our College Financial Aid 101. I am here with the amazing Dr. Dianna Barbour, who's going to introduce herself here in just a few minutes, but just really excited for her to come on and talk with me and kind of go through what we're doing. So let's first talk about a little overview of what we're going to be talking about tonight. Dianna, why don't you tell us what we're going to be discussing tonight?
Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be here tonight and talk about financial aid. So today we're going to figure out a way to determine our out-of-pocket costs. And then for each university that actually sent an acceptance to our team, then we're going to try to figure out a way to compare colleges. And then we're going to talk about strategies how to go about asking for more aid.
Well, I always love talking about money, and especially asking about getting more money in our pockets and less money, paying for college. So thank you again for just being here. Most of you, I see Ariel, hi, know me or have followed me for quite a while. So my name is Dr. Amanda Sturk. And I'm a lifelong educator, higher ed administrator, and I'm the author of College UnMazed, which is right now in the Florida edition, but we're doing a national version here coming out in July. So super excited. But I write and speak a lot about the high school to college process. So whether it's college admissions, scholarships, academic planning is actually my favorite subject. I do a lot of webinars, and I also have a College UnMazed app. So if you want to connect with me, please feel free to download the free app, both iOS and Google. And next, Dianna, why don't you tell us who you are?
Hello again. So my name is Dianna Barbour. I served as an executive administrator for a couple of institutions, both universities and colleges. My experience in higher education includes student enrollment, student persistence, financial aid, graduation. So everything really, my work touched all aspects of student services. I used to work as a strategic planning developer, as well as I worked on implementing strategic plans. But basically, I found out that the more I worked in higher education, I realized that higher education tends to be this field that's very well known to the people who work within it and has like a lot of keywords. That if those things would get translated for parents and students, it would help parents and students be more successful and more mindful about what college really means, what are the specifics of college, and how to help students be more successful. I did a lot of research. I have my PhD from Florida State University, so go Noles. I did a lot of research on student retention, enrollment, success overall, and basically there is this one thing that comes up on a regular basis as a strong predictor. Is not the only predictor, but as a strong predictor of students enrolling in college, persisting through college, and graduating college, and this is finances. So the better we understand the finances and the financial aid piece of things, the better we are prepared to actually help our teens to navigate college. College, as you're going to see, it's a whole different story, right? So by now you have a very thorough knowledge of K through 12 and all the processes that go through that, and the students, how they navigated it and everything else. But now you're kind of getting ready to send the teen to college, and college is a different thing. It's a completely different thing. So I set out on a mission to actually put together resources in one place, easy to use, so that everybody who is willing to actually allocate about 5 hours of their time to a topic such as financial aid, they're going to learn everything they need to know about it in one shot, and there's not going to be any kind of anxiety following that in terms of, did I cover all my bases? Do I know everything there is to know? Is there something that I don't know that can hurt me in the long run? So this is the reason why I basically put all that information together in the Ultimate College Financial Aid Guide. It just got published. You'll probably see the February 6th, and it's available through Amazon. So if you have a chance and if you're interested in more details, please go ahead and get it. But today we're going to kind of go through a few elements that appear in the book, and I really think are really helpful for parents and students to actually navigate the financial aid process. So without further ado, we're going to go into the thing. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is calculating the out-of-pocket college costs. So first of all, let me congratulate you. You are almost at the end of a process that started probably for some of you in the 9th grade, in the 10th grade, a long time ago. This is a long and elaborate process. So by now, you probably got your acceptance letters, and probably by now you already got some financial aid letters. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the difference in between acceptance letters and financial aid letters. And the most important thing to know is that you don't need to make a decision on a college based solely on acceptance letters. So as you're going to see throughout today's presentation, higher education is this thing that's non-standardized. So basically, each university and each college kind of does things the way they see fit, the way their goals align, the way their data systems are set up. So when you get an acceptance letter, you may get an acceptance letter from College A or one from College B, and the acceptance letter from College A is going to just say, oh, welcome, we're so excited that you're going to join us, la, la, la. The acceptance letter from College B may be like, oh, we're so excited, and here's how much aid we're going to give you to actually attend our college. Now, the thing to keep in mind about acceptance letters that do have aid in them, just know that typically that amount of aid comes from the institution and is not the complete picture. So that's why in committing and deciding on committing to a college, always wait for the financial aid letter. The financial aid letter is the letter that's going to tell you actually how much money you got from all the three sources. We're going to go into the three sources in a second. But the financial aid letter, it's actually going to give you the clear picture of how much college is going to cost for the first year. So I'm just curious. So we have a poll here, and I'm just curious. Let's see if it works. I would love to, I just published the poll. I would love to hear and see how many financial aid letters have you received so far. So if you happen to be a Florida resident and only apply to UF and FSU, you probably didn't get any financial aid letters because they just got their, oh, excellent. They just got their acceptances out. Alrighty, so we seem to be split in between 3 or less or none. And that's very normal. Financial aid letters typically come, it depends how the university sets up their processes, but financial aid letters typically come within sometimes 3 days and sometimes a couple of months. Yeah. There's no standardization. There's no like cookie cut or anything. Everything kind of happens in the rhythm that the college has. And the commitment happens and the college expects the decision within a specified timeline, but that's typically May 1st type of thing unless they specify it otherwise. So this is super exciting. So now that we have we saw that some of you received 3 or more financial aid letters and some of you didn't receive any. I'm just going to show you the bare bones of 2 financial aid letters that a student received not last year, but 2 years ago. So I'm just going to walk you a little bit through them. We're going to go into more details a little bit later. But what I want you to see is how different they are, right? So no standardization. Each college does it the way they think is best, the way their data system works. And obviously, these financial aid letters are generated based on certain algorithms and data processes. And the financial aid letters can come into more than one format, right? So they can come into this very glossy format where you have like these amounts and you have a lot of explanations and a lot of things. These are just basically the bare bones. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes they can come in an email where you have an attachment. Or the other way to get a financial aid letter, it's, oh, you got accepted. Now go to the portal. Eventually, you're going to get an email which says, go to the portal to see your financial aid options. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be not exactly like this, but something similar.
And what's hard, I think, is a lot of families don't know which one to go to, right? Like you said, it's not standardized. So sometimes you get a letter and you're so excited and you're looking about your other school, but that's in the portal. And so it can be very stressful to figure out, where's my money?
Like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that makes comparing colleges, first of all, that makes determining your out-of-pocket cost and comparing colleges a little bit more difficult than it should be. But, you know, so what we're going to do next, I'm just curious if you, let's launch another poll and tell me how similar or how different the financial aid letters that you received are. So the poll is open. Let's see if it works. So I have different, similar. Okay, so we are kind of split 50-50. So, well,
a little more different, yeah.
There you go, 66%. So 66% of the people are saying that 75, 80, 83. There you go. Yeah, they tend to be different, and that's normal, unfortunately. So I'm going to close the poll, and we're going to go to the next thing. So we're going to talk about the purpose of the financial aid letter. So the financial aid letter has two purposes, and those purposes are to tell you what's the source of the money that you got. The financial aid letter is going to tell you how much money you got from the feds, from the federal government, which basically you get by filing the FAFSA, how much money you got from the state funds, and how much money you got from the college or the institution. I remember being very, very young in my career and going to this president's presentation, and the president basically telling us about a story on how he goes into various presentations with students and tells students, look to your right, look to your left. Out of the three of you, nobody pays the same amount of money for college. That goes to say that basically different students and different parents have different circumstances. So basically it's very hard to actually find two students who receive the same amount of aid from the same kind of source. But just know that some colleges are doing a very good job actually providing totals and out-of-pocket costs. The ones that don't, then it's on us to actually take an extra step to actually determine these out-of-pocket costs. So here's how we're going to go about it. So these are ideally the elements that should appear in a financial aid letter. And basically, this is my way of standardizing everything, putting it together, and showing it in a way that it eventually is going to make colleges comparable with each other. So in terms of scholarships and grants, that's gift aid. You probably heard so much about it, so I'm not going to emphasize anything there. The only thing is, and you probably know this already like really well, scholarships tend to be awarded for academic achievements, and grants tend to be awarded for financial need. In terms of loan aid, the only type of loans that are going to show up on a financial aid letter are federal loans. And the only way to qualify for those loans is by filing FAFSA. There's three types of federal loans. There's the unsubsidized loan, the subsidized loan, and the Parent Plus loan. The subsidized and unsubsidized loans are kept. So basically the maximum amount of loans that you can get there is $5,500 per year for year one, and then that amount increases. But then the amount of Parent Plus loans can be significant. So it can go all the way up to covering the entire cost of attendance. There's a lot of moving pieces to loans, and I'm sure you probably are super familiar with them. But if you're planning on taking on a private loan, the wisdom out there is typically that you should exhaust the federal sources of loans and then only consider private loans, because private loans tend to have more elaborate terms and tend to be less flexible in terms of loan repayment, of deferment, and everything else. The other thing that I really want to touch on here is earned aid, work study or campus employment. So there's two types of earned aid. Earned aid means that the student who gets this. So basically, if you see these things on your financial aid letter, that means that your team is eligible for this money, but they're going to have to work for them. And in order to get this money, they need to find a job on campus. So unless they find a job on campus, even if work study shows up on their financial aid letter, they're not going to get the money. Now, universities know this, and many universities and colleges have like these job fairs for work study students, where basically different departments get together with these students and kind of do like these super informal interviews and say, here's what I need you to do. Let me know if you're interested. And that's the first connection. That's typically the first job of the students on campus. Work study comes from federal funds, and the most important thing to know about it is that not all colleges or universities participate in work study. And work study is also awarded based on need, so financial need. Campus employment, it's awarded by the university whenever they feel like they really want the student to join. Mm-hmm. So campus employment has more flexibility around it. Typically, the amount of work, the amount of hours that students need to work to actually complete work study and campus employment are about 15 to 20 hours a week. So it's not that much. And for freshmen, that's like a very, very good amount, because we don't want them working too much time, especially during the freshman year. So now, in order to be able to actually compare colleges, apples to apples, we're going to go into the cost of attendance. And
can we stop for 1 second?
Yes.
So, for example, like I have a student assistant right now who came from the work study program. And so she's getting minimum wage, and she's doing small tasks for me in my role as an administrator. And it's great. Sometimes you work in the cafeteria or somewhere else. But I remember I'm from Iowa. And, a lot of us like the work study because we didn't have to go off campus. Exactly. And so, you didn't have to get in your car, warm up in the middle of the winter time, go drive somewhere. And you're getting the same amount that I would have gotten, within the local community. And it was right there. They worked with our hours and really good. And I want to go back one more to the scholarships. And this is a big question I get with Bright Futures, because a lot of you are Florida people on here. If you're not, maybe your state has some scholarships, but Bright Futures is our Florida state scholarship. It typically does not show up on your award letter because you're not officially given it until you're done. So some schools do put Bright Futures on there and some don't. So for example, if you're kind of waiting for that, you might really want to check and see if they do put Bright Futures in that award letter or not. And then as a reminder, any of your local scholarships, like through your local foundations or your school districts, wouldn't show up under that gift aid. So if you are getting money from outside sources besides the institution, what's going to be on your award letter is only going to be that FAFSA, the federal aid, and what's given to you by the institution and possibly by the state if you qualify sometimes for like first generation matching scholarship or the teaching scholarship. Like there's different ones that could automatically show up. So do know that if you do have external scholarships coming in, that is not going to show up on that award letter. So that's something that you would have to take into account kind of once you're getting this cost of attendance, which you'll talk about next in your net price. I think that's a big question. Like, where's my Bright Futures? It's not on my award letter. And it's like, well, it's coming. You just got to wait.
Yeah, and Florida, it's unique in that besides FAFSA, for the Bright Futures, it actually requires a separate application to be completed. Mm-hmm. That's not always the case in other states, but higher education, it's not standardized. You're probably going to have dreams about this. So each state and each university and college does things the way they see fit.
And so, right. Dianna, I do have a private question here. How long does it take to hear back once you submit the FAFSA application?
It depends. I think it depends by college and by university. So here's the thing. Let's say whatever college A, for the sake of the argument, has 10,000 applicants. all of those 10,000 applicants are going to be processed first by the admissions office and then by the financial aid office. Mm-hmm. So the amount of work on the financial aid officers can be staggering because not all the students that get accepted are actually going to enroll, but all the students that get accepted have to be packaged. So it depends on how many resources that financial aid office has. And I think that's basically the biggest consideration in terms of how long does it take. The other side of it is that you can apply for FAFSA even after you got accepted into college. So the window of time to apply to submit the FAFSA, it's like, I think 21 months. So basically, the window of time for fall 2021 students is going to close at the end of spring 2022, because that's how the federal government works. So if you didn't do it, and you still want to do it, financial aid officers may still be able to actually process that request, the FAFSA, everything. And if you do get some money, you're going to get a reimbursement and everything else. But yeah, I think there's many things that are actually dependent on the college, and some colleges do it faster. It just depends.
And that's why if you can do your EFC, your estimated family contribution, which there's calculators. College Board has a good little calculator. I've used it before to see how much money my husband and I will get as educators. And we get some, which is exciting, or not exciting, whichever way you look at it. But we do get some money. So that kind of gives you an idea, because the federal amount is set. Like, you can only get so much money. Yeah. And then comes the loans, and that's where that number, if you can get bigger. So in terms of your FAFSA, you can kind of go into knowing how much you would get. But every school kind of gives aid a little bit differently. Privates can give a lot more than sometimes public, but that federal FAFSA amount is a set amount for your Pell grants.
Yeah. So in the best case scenario, you may be eligible for the maximum amount of Pell, which I think at this point it's 6,531. But depending on your EFC, so if your EFC is below, I think 5,577, I think that's the threshold for this upcoming year. So if your EFC is below 5,577, then you're going to be eligible for some amount of Pell, not the entire amount. So basically, we can end up with students who are actually getting $1 or $3 in Pell, because that's how the whole thing is set up. Or we can end up with students who are getting 5,000, 6,000, it depends. But it all depends on that EFC. And there's a FAFSA forecaster that you can use. Yeah, I know. And then the resource that Amanda talked about, you should really kind of look into it if you have a chance.
And Brandy, just to answer your question, she asked about when does Bright Futures get communicated. Typically, your school counselors get a list of all the people that are qualified, because they pull 3 times a year, the state does. And then they let your counselor know who gets on each poll, who's eligible at that time. So you definitely want to talk to your counselor to make sure all those documents are in. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, this is excellent. All right, so cost of attendance. So I'm going to kind of emphasize a little bit the cost of attendance, because this is going to be the key thing that is going to actually let us compare apples to apples. So cost of attendance is comprised of 2 areas. So we have the direct cost, which is basically the costs that are paid to the university so that you can register and live on campus, eat, sleep, whatever. But these costs, as I said, are paid directly to the university. And then we have the indirect costs. These costs are not paid to the university. These are for books and supplies and transportation and insurance and different other things. Now, it's important to actually take into consideration indirect costs, because if you have difficulty kind of covering indirect costs, scholars found that they can impact students' success. So it's always important to actually pull both pieces of the cost of attendance information, and we're going to see later on, when we're going to actually compare College A and College B in terms of net price or out-of-pocket cost, that's going to be important. So I wanted to actually just show you real quick the fact that cost of attendance shows up in College A And it's a little bit more like very detailed, and it's not kind of split in direct or indirect costs and all that kind of stuff. But it does kind of cover all the direct and indirect costs. Now, for College B, you're going to see that the only kind of cost that shows up is the direct cost. Now, the thing with the direct cost, we don't really know, is it tuition and fees? Is it room and board? We don't really know. And if you have some financial aid letters that don't really have a breakdown, I'm going to show you. So I had the poll, so we're going to skip this one. But in order to find the cost of attendance, there's two ways. So there's one way. The first way is to actually go to the university's website and kind of figure out how much room and board and tuition and fees are going to cost for the upcoming either semester or upcoming year. Now, some universities are going to say, oh, our cost per credit hour is this much and fee per credit hour is this much. So that makes calculating cost of attendance a little bit more difficult. So if you are kind of willing to kind of go with a little bit of ambiguity, College Navigator provides the cost of attendance for the prior year. So basically, College Navigator is going to help you get an idea about how much it's tuition and fees and room and board and books and supplies and other expenses and everything else. Let's see. I think it's going to be difficult to go to College Navigator right now, but when you get a chance, just go in, type in the name of the university, and then go to student expenses. And you're going to be able to see how much each one of those categories is, and just kind of plan for a little bit of an increase possibly to those values, because those values are typically from the prior year. So now, this is why cost of attendance, it's so important to actually have both pieces into it. So our out-of-pocket cost or net price is going to be the total cost of attendance minus grants and scholarships. Note that this out-of-pocket cost excludes loans and it excludes work study. So we didn't have a chance to actually go into details about this, but this is how the cost of attendance for College A is going to look like. I want you to look at this. It says net cost after all aid. So in essence, this says after all loans, work and study, scholarships and everything else have been provided to the student, the cost of a student is zero. Now, the reality is that if you look down here, you're going to see that there's $30-some thousand in loans. Something happened. Sorry. So the real cost of attendance, let's close this. So the real cost of attendance for, not cost of attendance, the real out-of-pocket cost for College A for a student planning on attending College A is going to be $36,780 for the first year, because we're only taking this amount and subtracting from it only the scholarships, grants. That's it.
And so that's like, if I was a parent and I'm looking at this, and so you're saying, oh, I basically can go for free.
Right.
You were saying, when you look at, so you have fall semester and you have spring semester. So all of a sudden you look at those loans and you do 36,000, let's just round to 37 to make it easier, times 4 years. Then now all of a sudden, I mean, you're going to be that student that has $100,000+ of loan amount, even though you're not paying some subsidized. So unsubsidized, you have to pay as you go. So not everyone can do that. If you're a poor college student, paying that loan as you go, or parent is hard. Subsidized obviously happens after you graduate. So subsidized are a little bit better than unsubsidized at times, but still, I mean, and that's where you start saying your return on investment. Like, is the school in this degree worth $100,000+ comparatively to somewhere else that might be able to be cheaper, right?
Right.
But this must be a private or a pretty elite public, like an NYU, that, because it's, room and board is $67,000, with tuition. Yeah.
So now that we have College A, and like I said, this is going to be the out-of-pocket cost. Let's look at the out-of-pocket cost for College B. So what we see here is that everything has been put together. We don't really have, we have a total, but it's not really this one.
Not clear, yeah.
Right. So basically, once you take out the loans from this total, the total typically goes to 17. Not typically, the total goes to 17,500, and then considering the fact that we don't really have indirect costs included here, it's going to be 17,500 plus the indirect costs. Typically indirect costs, and it depends by the college, but they kind of vary in between $4,000 to $5,000 per year. So, given these things, I'm going to skip this one. So, given these things, now we need to figure out a way to actually compare colleges, because looking at them and kind of scribbling stuff on pieces of paper, it's all good and well. But if you actually want to see it in one place, it's going to be a little bit more difficult than that. So, now, the thing with the lack of standardization for financial aid letters has been showing up in research and has been showing up in various papers, and even NPR published a story about it a few years ago. This lack of standardization of financial aid letters didn't escape the federal government. So the federal government said, oh, there's this organization, the National Association of Financial Aid Administrators, NASFA for short, said, so the Fed said to NASFA, let's work together and kind of let's develop this standardized something so that people can make sense of the financial aid letter, given that they are so different. So they came up with the college financing plan. The college financing plan is very well put together. The only thing is that it deals with only one university. So, after they developed the college financing plan, which is in essence a standard financial aid letter, they said, universities or colleges, if you want to use it, but if you don't, that's fine. So basically, they didn't mandate the use of the college financial aid plan. So that's why we're still in this environment where different colleges or universities have different financial aid letters. But me, being the kind of type A personality that I am, I'm like, no, this is not. Here's how I would like to see it. I would like to see everything on one page. So I developed the college cost comparison spreadsheet, and some of you may already have downloaded it and already worked with it. If you didn't, go ahead, go to the website to College Talk or scan this, and you should be able to get to the website. And I can also follow up with an email to everybody to kind of give you the link to it. So what I did, I put together the elements of the financial aid letter in a way that made sense to me, so that as I'm going through a financial aid letter, there's automatic calculations that happen, and I identify areas that are missing information, right? So I'm missing information in terms of how much is the tuition and fees for College B, how much is the room and board, indirect costs, and so on and so forth. And then here is where I'm taking an extra step and saying, oh, these are my totals, actually. So I know what the university says, and I know the university says that this is going to be zero. This is actually how much College A is going to cost me for the first year, and then this is how much College B is going to cost me for the first year, plus the indirect costs that I really need to determine using College Navigator. And then I listed all the other awards, well, I guess, aid loans and that are available, and also the work study amounts that are available for me and my team. So this is me kind of putting everything together in a way that's actually making sense to me. And as I'm kind of getting financial aid letters, I'm taking each and every one of them, plugging in the numbers, the totals are going to calculate automatically, and eventually I'm going to be like, oh, this is my out-of-pocket cost, not whatever totals were included in the financial aid letter. So I'll follow up with an email, but if you have a QR code scanner, go ahead and scan this, and it's going to take you straight to the website, and you can download it and all that. So now Amanda, do you want to touch on something before we move on to the next big section?
No, I think people just had some questions about watching the video again, because I know it'll probably there's so much words and, going through, but I found Dr. Barbu, the sheet is really, really helpful, because you just need, because they're not standardized, you want to get them all together on one place. So when you are making that decisions, and this is a time, parents, you sort of have to remove a little bit of the emotional piece out of, this is my favorite college and this is my dream. And this is where, as students and parents, and there is, I know in the back of my book, I have discussion points, talk about these things, but budget and loans and things has to be a serious conversation, because these are lifelong. When you're looking at the astronomical, next to mortgages, student loan debt is the second largest loan debt of everyone in the nation. The second largest next to mortgages, more than cars, more than anything else. And so students, as much as you love a college, if it's not if I'm going to be a teacher and I'm going to come out with $100,000 in debt, you're never going to make that up. Let's just be honest. You're just never going to make that up. And so your return on investment, including what your career opportunities are going to be. So if I'm going to be a teacher, you're going to be capped at a certain salary, period. I'm a teacher. You're capped. I'm not going to be making $100,000. I'm just not, and so you have to look at sort of the field you're in, and is that return on investment actually going to do that? I'm seeing a lot of students get really smart too. If I can do my undergrad for cheaper and I'm going on for my graduate program, which is pretty much the same cost, there's not as much differences whether you're in state, out of state, or whatever. But parents and students, you have to have this conversation, put it on one sheet, talk seriously about it, and then pay. Who's paying for what? Because as a student, how much do you have to be in charge of? As the parent, are you taking on that loan? Yeah. There's just so many points. So, Dr. Barbour, this is fantastic that you put it so simply for them, but please just have that conversation as well as doing this activity. That's my 2 cents.
Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. And then when we're talking about loans of, $35,000 per year for a degree, we need to kind of be mindful of, like you said, the return on investment. There's a section in the book that actually discusses on the amount of loans that people could comfortably take on, depending on major. There's been numbers that have been prepared by the U.S. Department of Education. They are new. I think they're not 100% clear, but it's a good start. And it's a good start to actually take a look at those numbers and kind of figure out what's my salary after graduation going to be, and figure out the amount of aid that, not the amount of loans that anybody could comfortably take on and kind of move forward with their college education.
And I think about, sometimes we just think about loans and we think about scholarship aid. Also think about what accelerated credit you could bring in. Could you do some CLEP exams? Could you take some summer courses at your state community college and they transfer over at half the cost? I know our state colleges are half the tuition of any of the state universities. So right there could be significant savings. And even if you can knock off a semester or a semester and a half, that could, in theory, end up being $20,000 to $45,000. And also, just because we have a lot of Florida people here as well, what we don't want is kids to extend past that 4th year. It gets even more costly. And I know in your book, you talk a lot about you can lose your financial aid. You can lose your Bright Futures. You can lose your merit aid. And if you go too long here in our state, there's actually a state law that penalizes you and your tuition doubles. So if you can get out early, you can stay on track, you can take some credits elsewhere, live off campus. There's other ways that you can sort of manage this big cost. But again, that comes with the conversation and knowing, okay, if this is the school I want, what can I do to reduce that cost as much as possible?
That's a very good point. And that reminds me also of this other thing. So I'm pretty sure that many of your teens already took a lot of AP classes. Look at the university and look at the college that your teen plans to attend and see which AP classes they're going to recognize as accelerated credit and already award the student credit, right? So there's these two options to actually do accelerated, I guess, three options to do accelerated credit. And one of them is dual enrollment. And if you're a Florida resident, I think that's a great, great thing.
I'm biased.
Right?
I'm on a dual enrollment program, if you don't know.
Yeah, but then there's also AP. So AP tends to be more exactly outside of the state and tends to be more versatile across the US. So always kind of look at those options in terms of, does my dream university take AP classes? Because not all of them do. Does it take dual enrollment classes and CLEP and everything else? So yeah, definitely.
Typically, I know I was working with a client recently, and she's in Belarus, and she's doing an IB program, and she's interested. I think it was Penn State is where she's one of the colleges, and we looked it up in the college catalog. So I put a note on there, college catalog, and all college catalogs I have seen have listed how credit articulates. And so her IB credits, we found several of those would articulate as credit if she were to go that. So before you commit, if you do have a lot of credit, you definitely want to check in with that, especially if you're going out of state, even in state. How does my credit transfer? What do I need to have that happen? And how can I sort of line everything up? But that college catalog is an underutilized resource prior to, I think once they're at your college and even prior to college, if you could do it prior and learn what classes you need, and if your credit, it'll help you so much more in your life. So Brandy had a question for you, Dr. Barbu. It looks like your book is only on Kindle on Amazon. Is that correct? Or is it in print yet?
It's not in print yet. 2 weeks. It's going to be in print in the next 2 weeks. But so far, it's Kindle Unlimited. It's free through Kindle Unlimited if you have the subscription. But otherwise, it's $4.99, the e-version of the book. And then there's the resources, like the college comparison spreadsheet. As you kind of go through the book, you're going to find the links to actually click and download it and everything else. But no print yet, but it's coming in about 2 weeks. All right, so now we're going to go to the last piece of today's presentation. So how to ask for more aid. This is very relevant, particularly at this point in time. So I'm going to talk about two pieces. And the first piece that I'm going to talk about is the need-based aid. So I'm probably preaching to the choir, but need-based aid, it's awarded based on financial need, and it tends to be in the form of grants. Merit-based aid, it's based on academic achievement, SAT, ACT scores, GPA, and so on and so forth. So we're going to talk about need-based aid first. So the thing with need-based aid, the way it's going to be, it is awarded, I guess, for the fall of 2021. It's awarded based on data and tax information from 2019. If your financial situation changed since 2019, and it might have, mine did, I don't mind it significantly. If your financial situation changed, financial aid officers have professional judgment, flexibility to revisit your federal and sometimes state need aid part of the packet. So basically, if one of the parents lost a job or has been furloughed, or sometimes if the medical bills went up, or there's been like this weird thing happening for some strange reasons, and now it's COVID, right? 2019 was economic boom. Everybody got good jobs. Everybody had good jobs, good, decent paying jobs, and now we're like in a weird situation. So if your financial situation changed, make sure you provide the financial aid officer with as much information and as much documentation as you can to convince them to actually look at your need-based aid side of the packet. Here's what you could get. So if if your financial situation changed, you could get access to subsidized loans, as Amanda talked about subsidized loans. Subsidized loans, the interest is paid by the federal government as long as the student is in college. So the student doesn't have to worry about the interest. So those are sort of the best kind of loans that you can get. They are capped, but they are the best kind of loans that you can get. You can get access also to a higher amount of unsubsidized loans as well, if you're deemed eligible and everything else. Or it might be that your Pell Grant may go up. And if the school is interested, it's basically providing need-based aid, right, like the Ivies are. So if prior to this you weren't eligible for any kind of grants from them, they may consider you now for those grants, just because the financial situation changed. So this is how you go about asking for more need aid. And just, financial situation change, go for it. The other side of it, it's appealing the merit-based aid, right? So appealing the merit-based aid, I talk about several kind of situations in the book, how to actually frame the response or the request, really. I always advise everybody to look at their SAT and ACT scores, even though it was optional this year. So, look at the SAT and ACT scores of prior students who enrolled at the university in the past and see where your student kind of ranks. The College Navigator has in the admissions section, has the 25th to 75th percentile of the SAT, ACT scores, and you can kind of see where your teen kind of scored in relation to those things. So if your teen scored, about halfway through or above the 75%, the 75th percentile, then make an argument, if you want, that, maybe they may want to revisit your financial aid packet. The other thing is with high school GPAs. Now, there's a catch with high school GPAs. So the catch, it's on the data side. So the federal government doesn't collect high school GPAs, but the common data set does collect the high school GPAs. So there's a way to actually get to the common data set on the university's website or on College Board or Princeton Review to actually see the average and also the spread, right? So the interval and the number of students scoring within certain intervals of 3 to 3.5, 3.5 to 4, and so on and so forth, and see how your team compares to that. Also, the other thing is, don't start this process if you're not like super sure that your team wants to attend a particular college, right? So if you have your heart set on a particular college, try to make an argument for why you want to go to that college, or your teen wants to attend that college, and how much money it's going to make them decide. Sometimes small amounts of money can make a difference, and sometimes they can't. But the reality is that if you put in a little bit of praise and a little bit of commitment, something good may come out of it. Now, this doesn't mean that they're going to honor every appeal to financial aid. But the reality is that if you appeal, they're not going to take anything off of your letter, right? So they're not going to take that institutional aid that they already gave you. They're not going to take different things. So just kind of make sure you know how much you're looking for to actually make it work. And then be ready to commit. Because if they do come through, then it's your turn to actually commit. So just have a clear idea. Oh, and if you do plan on appealing both sides, both the merit and the need aid, do it in one shot. Don't do this piece now, that piece later. There's more ways than one to go about it, but I'm always a big advocate of actually doing this kind of arguments in email or on paper, basically, because you're going to send in the documentation, and there's going to be a lot of hands and a lot of heads that are going to need to look at this information, and they need all the information that they get. So if you do want to kind of reach out to the admissions counselor and kind of establish a relationship, fine, go ahead. but always follow up with an email and with the specifics so that they have something to go from their office to financial aid or whichever else and say, here's why, right? Here's why we should consider awarding more aid to this person versus that person, and so on and so forth.
I think a lot of families don't realize is we have set amounts that we can give out every year, right? The colleges. So we have a pile of money and as applications go out or admissions goes out and those admission letters, we give money out. So that award letter, and sometimes merit and aid given is just to reduce the cost of college and to entice a family or a student to come, right? And so my college is like that College A you showed. And so if I can reduce it down to this much, this is what we plan on getting out. I've had a lot of students who maybe received a better scholarship or aid package. I remember vividly a girl who was a Crestbridge student, and which is a Crestbridge scholarship. If you're a high achieving minority student, definitely check it out. A lot of full rides, but she got a full ride to Grinnell College, and it's in the middle of nowhere, Iowa. So I felt for her, you know, leaving Florida and going. And anyway, she was interested in Florida Southern College here in Lakeland, Florida. Beautiful college, ranked one of the most beautiful colleges in the United States. One of my favorites, I do have to say. And she was able to take that Grinnell scholarship and say, you know what, I'm feeling a little bit more at home here, but look at this big scholarship I got here. Can you at least, you know, you might not be able to match it, but could you do a little bit better and work with me? And they were able to work with her, and they reduced, even though it was a very low price to begin with, by another about $10,000, which made it very accessible and cheaper than actually a public university would have been for her. But she was able to kind of have the apples to apples, you know, College A and College B were pretty similar. So they were able to take that and say, but like you said, that's part of that demonstrated interest. Like, I will take this seat if we could get to this amount. And so, like you said, only do it if that's kind of the school and you want to lower it a little bit more. Don't waste time if it's really not in your best interest, because then you're just taking money away from another student who could have had it. But again, they're not going to take it away. I just had a quick question here. What if you are also waiting on recruiting for sports? Is there any advice that you have on like kind of sports scholarships or getting in through sports?
I don't. Typically, those type of funds are coming from institutional budgets, right? So those are institutional aid. I'm thinking that they should show up in the financial aid letter under that section by the time they actually put together the offer.
Because pretty early. I mean, usually sports scholarships, they build their team very early. So you definitely want to check. And like you said, it's a different pool of money. So you definitely want to check in with whoever's leading that program to have that. And I think, Jean, we just answered your question. She asked, is it appropriate to share what you received from another college if the money difference or aid will directly impact the school the teen will accept? And our answer is, yeah. I mean, if it can benefit the student and possibly get more money, definitely. And that's why it is good to, when you are applying, a lot of you, if you are seniors, you're sort of already there, right? If you're juniors and you're kind of thinking forward, think about having a few that are comparable colleges and see. You had mentioned the website College Navigator. I really like using the College Board, the Big Future. It's just a little prettier sometimes to use. And they have a paying button and also track, because some colleges really are devoted to giving a lot of money, like University of Chicago, Dartmouth. Click on the Questbridge. I like looking at that list of those lists of colleges, because those are dedicated to give 100% need. So if you have a huge EFC need, they will meet 100% of that need. And I think that's just a great list of colleges that are really trying to meet all student needs. And some colleges like NYU and some big ones, University of Michigan, I mean, there's several that are like, we know who we are and we don't really need to reduce the cost all that much. I mean, true, right?
Yep. Each college kind of does things
their own thing.
Best. Yep.
Do they hurt the federal aid? What do you mean? Let's see, let me scroll down here. Denise had a question. I think I missed it. Oh, I said that. Okay. She was talking about sports scholarships. She was the one that asked about sports. And does that hurt federal aid? No, those are two separate pots of money. So one aid does not affect another aid. And usually they're stackable, right? So like in our state, if you have Bright Futures and you get additional merit and you get a local scholarship and you get something from your local foundation, all of those can be stackable. So you definitely want to check and see. And some aren't. Some say we've already given merit aid and we only got one merit aid and that's all you get. Don't ask for more. So you just got to pay attention to what is stackable and that's another word they use is stackable. Is it stackable?
Yeah. Yeah, paying attention to stackability is very, very important because, again, each university does whatever they feel is best. So, if you manage to secure an external scholarship, some universities may stack it and you may end up paying way less. And some universities may say, we're not going to stack it, but we're going to decrease our effort, our institutional effort. So it depends by the university. Just kind of try to figure out a way to get to that information. Typically, the catalogs are a very good place to get to that information. But if not, just pick up the phone and call or send an email. But yeah, it depends by the university.
And I would also suggest, again, if you're a senior, you're kind of in a harder spot right now. And if you're rising, I've seen kids miss scholarship opportunities because there was an interview and the email got buried in their email account, or it was in like that portal that we talked about. I know at our college, the only way we're giving out financial aid is through their portal. So that if the student doesn't know how to log into their portal and does it, they're never going to see that aid is sitting in there because we don't even send out anything anymore, especially in COVID, because everyone sort of shut down and we don't have that many student assistants that are packaging up and mailing stuff out. So a lot of stuff has become digital. So parents, this is a really great time to always designate a clear email that you're using for college applications and you're keeping it clean of other teenage stuff or parent stuff that I sign up for, and really I would have one or two people monitoring it at all times because it's so easy things to go in your spam or you miss it. But I had a student it was an interview at Nova Southeastern and she missed it by 15 minutes. That it was due by noon and she came running into me at like 12:15 and she's like, I got this email and it had been a few days prior, I think maybe like 2 weeks prior, completely missed it. And they called and they said, if you can't respond in 2 weeks, then it was like the presidential scholarship. I mean, it would have been up for basically a full ride. And I mean, she was heartbroken and she missed it. So just really, that's where, along with what you have, Dr. Barbour, but like an Excel sheet, keeping track of the deadlines, checking out the institution's additional scholarships are good. And one thing, like we were saying, it's a pile of money, right? So we give it out. Well, if they don't accept, that money comes back to us.
Exactly.
So we could give that back out and we want somebody to have that money. So there could be some additional monies that we didn't have a month ago, but so it's always best to ask.
Hence the make,
do an appeal.
For more merit aid. Also, one other point, just real quick. The fact that loans show up in your financial aid letter doesn't mean that you have to accept them. And doesn't mean that you have to go for the full amount. So basically, you can decline a loan, or you can say, I only need this amount of money out of this loan. So you can work with loans and you can work with the financial aid officers to make the appropriate adjustments. But don't feel that if you got a loan, you have to take it because you don't, or have to take the full amount because you don't.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, because you feel like it's on there. I have to take the grant money. Always take the grant and scholarship money, and never say no to that. Never say no to that. Take all of that you can do. But yeah, definitely. And like I said, look for other opportunities outside. But it can get trying. And again, don't forget, FAFSA is an every year process. So we said, we're at 8:00 already. Before we leave, Dr. Barbour, what are some tips and tricks on making sure that you keep this aid money?
Keeping the aid money is very, very important, because you need to look at the grants and the scholarships that you're getting and make sure you have a very clear idea about, they're called satisfactory academic progress requirements. So some of this money, some of these scholarships and grants have requirements in terms of you maintaining a certain GPA to be eligible for the grant or for the scholarship next year. Bright Futures is one of that. So Bright Futures has those requirements. So it's always a very good kind of practice to look at the money that you got, the scholarship that you got, and the requirements for that scholarship, because the fact that you got it 1 year doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get it the second year. And then the other side of it is that there's research out there that actually says, and if you're like me, that students transitioning from high school into college, the first year and the first semester is going to be very, very difficult. There's been a study from University of California, I think at Davis, that found out that students lost a full point in their GPA in between their first year to the second year. So basically, their GPA went from 2.7 to from 3.7 to 2.7 in 1 year, and they did lose eligibility for various grants and scholarships in the process, because the standards are different, the expectations are different. There's obviously independence, but there's also the need to actually care for oneself, sometimes care for family members, and do different things. So just kind of be very mindful of the requirements for continuing to get a scholarship.
Absolutely.
And some scholarships, you may find some scholarships that are only for the first year, and some scholarships are for the entire duration of your studies. Just kind of make sure you double check everything. If you cannot find the situation,
renewable, right? You can get them and sometimes you have to reapply, even though you might get it. You still have to reapply. So you have to know every money that you get. What's the catch?
Exactly.
What has a catch? But make sure you know what the catch is. Yeah. Brandy asks, so to clarify, we have to fill out the FAFSA every year the student is in college.
Exactly. Yes. And I think if you applied for so if you're going to an institution that takes the CSS profile, I think it's the same thing for those institutions. You have to just double check with them. But yes, and it's like that. And the Pell Grant in particular, I think the satisfactory academic progress requirement, those SAPs requirements are set by each college. So there's no one kind of hard, fast rule. This is what you need to do to keep the Pell Grant or to keep whatever. No, like every college sets up their satisfactory academic progress requirement. So make sure you look into them.
Yeah, all things to really think about. And so again, having the conversation about money is really important. And as you're deciding on your university, because you know that these grants and these scholarships can be taken away from students if they're not academically successful, it's extremely important to know what the support services are at the school, what happens if my student's not doing well, and how can they access extra tutoring, mental health services. I mean, I know some big universities, I won't mention names, that are up near your neck of the woods, Dr. Barbu, and some others that, I mean, it's almost 4 weeks to get into a counseling session when a student needs mental health, because they just have so many students. So, students, they go through a transition phase just like parents do. And sometimes it's overwhelming and there's a lot of pressure, and kids go from these stringent IB programs to a lot of freedom. And it can just really affect students in different ways. So please also look at the support structures of each university much more in depth than you ever did on a college tour. They're like, oh, we got counseling. Oh, no, go into it, see how easy it is to get an appointment and to have that, because that is going to be the critical piece that if a student's not doing well, that's going to make or break them a lot of times. And so parents and students don't ask enough about, like, so affordability is the number one thing that parents look at for, picking a college, right? Usually for kids, it's location. But number 6 is mental health and support services. Like, that is so far down the train, but that should be like number 1 or 2, because that's what's going to really help the kid get through. But that's my, my social emotional side of me is we don't do enough in that area. And it does connect with financial aid, because you can lose your money.
Yeah. And the other side of it is that also in my experience for the past several years, like it's been really several years, universities are investing more and more resources in mental health, in tutoring, in student success, in making sure that students progress. There's a lot of research that goes on in those areas. I used to run a lot of research on that area. But basically, there's a lot of focus in universities and colleges at this particular point in time on student support, mental health services, preventing homelessness, helping students, co-curricular education, and everything really that kind of helps the student become a well-rounded professional and also kind of enjoy the experience and go through it seamlessly and, if possible, in 4 years.
Yes, definitely, because that's a huge way to save money, right, is to do it on time. So well, we are definitely past our time. Dr. Barbu, is there a way, I think the next slide, can you show the next slide? Is your contact, or is that the last one? All right, let's put in, can I put your Gmail account in here?
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Barbu.
And I'm going to, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, no, I'm just typing it.
So what I'm going to do, once we get the list of participants, I'm going to send you an email with how to get to the Excel spreadsheet, and then also the website to kind of get more information. And please reach out. Whatever questions you may have, please reach out. I'm doing this out of a sense of mission. So yeah.
Hence why I found you, right? Because I think our missions are so well aligned.
Yeah.
And thank you, everyone that stayed with us this evening. We will get this out to you, like Dr. Barbu said, and get those links and some stuff out as well. But thank you for spending your night with us. Hopefully you learned a lot. As always, thank you for being a part of College UnMazed. And thank you so much, everybody. You have a great night.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you all. Take care. Bye.